Good afternoon. This webinar offers closed captioning. Welcome to the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection's free business education webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. We will be taking questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to use the chat option to put your questions in. All BACP webinars are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, which is a free program for anyone interested in starting or growing a business in Chicago. Getting your certificate is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Register for the program, attend 6 webinars in 6 months, and graduate to get your certificate. Please note that you must already be registered for the program to get credit for attending today's webinar. For full details about the program, please visit chicago.gov/BACP certificate. Views, informations, and opinions expressed during this webinar are those of the presenter and are not the official policy or position of the City of Chicago or BACP. The information mentioned will be posted in the chat box. Today's webinar is on A Great Business Plan Leads to Success by SCORE. I will be passing it to Toya Hemingway, Executive Committee Advisor from SCORE.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Toya Hemingway, and I am a mentor here at SCORE Chicago. First, a little about SCORE. SCORE is a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. We help small businesses start and grow their businesses by providing training, resources, and free mentoring services. We provide free business advice and mentoring to small businesses who come to us for advice and counsel on getting started or growing their businesses. We also offer low or no cost business training, such as the one you're attending today. And we share free business templates and resources on a wide range of topics and small business needs. I encourage you to get a mentor if you don't already have one, to browse our site and to take advantage of all that SCORE has to offer. Please feel free to go to score.org/Chicago to look at our available options. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Aaron Lebedeau. Aaron was co-founder and chairman of a global marketing and consulting organization which served senior management of Fortune 500 companies and assessed those companies' market environments in terms of growth, technological threats, opportunities, and competitive positioning. Aaron, thank you so much for providing this webinar for us today.
Thank you, Toya. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you taking your time this afternoon. I'd like to reiterate Toya's comment about your questions. There is no inappropriate question to pose, and we will respond to it when you ask it. We are not waiting till the end of the presentation. So that's a critical part of what we're trying to accomplish today, because the more questions that are relevant to us, the better presentation we're going to have for your benefit. I think we can move to the next page, Toya, please. Great. On the table of contents, we're taking a moment to talk about SCORE, so you have a comfort level with what that organization may be. Toya touched on it. I'll elaborate on it again. And then there are a series of questions that we answer through the development of any business plan. By the way, this plan has been written in a manner really geared to a startup entity. I have a second plan that I've prepared for SCORE and have presented before for those that are existing businesses who typically write their own business plan, and I try to offer some commentary for them. But this one is basically geared to startup businesses. You're going to see the straightforward, the executive summary, the operation plan just defines what is the business. The marketing plan is crucial, and that's how to get your revenue. The financial basics relate to section number 5, which is the pro forma. when we've talked about pro forma, I'm not sure everyone has a grasp of what it means, because we've had some confusion in the past on presentations. A pro forma is a P&L statement relating to the future of a business. The historical aspects of a company are really covered in a normal profit and loss statement, but the pro forma is part of the forecast. And as you can imagine, in a business plan, the forecast is a critical part of what you're doing. The action plan really defines certain characteristics of what we're going to do in the plan, and then the basic premise is write the plan. I thought it might be interesting if I talked about some of the mistakes that I've seen made in writing a plan. So that's the section number 7. And in number 9, I guess it is, it really relates to the background of the people who are going to be involved in your business. And to the extent you know any of them, they can be defined in the plan. If you don't worry about it, because you merely can write the content of what their resume should look like, even though you can't identify anybody yet. Often that happens because the individual making the application for plan really hasn't funded it yet. And they're seeking help from either a loan or an investment by a third party. So basically, not to be concerned about it. It's characteristic of what is the end of the plan, and we look to have an idea of that person's background. Next page, please. Okay, in my case, actually, it's almost 11 years now. I can't quite, the commentary talks about 5, 10 years. It's actually 11 years now where I've taught this particular workshop on business planning. And again, as suggested there, it's geared to the startup of a business. The strategic growth plan workshop is one I've worked out where it's geared to existing companies who write their own business plans anyway. And in my case, I'm really trying to aid them in upgrading the plan that they've written. And that's what the focus is on the second one. And the second one, called strategic growth, the 3 bullets talk about what it encompasses. The growth opportunities there, the market segments they're focused on, and therefore whether they acquire into the new market, whether they enter or they do enter in a straightforward sense, or do they establish a joint venture with a third party. Okay, and then the final bullet is the end product of such a growth plan could be the sale of the much larger entity, or if it's a profit and loss opportunity, they may very well look for a public ownership situation. So they would go public with the company. So those are the options that I saw that are relevant to the strategic growth plan. We're going to focus on the second bullet, which is the business plan itself applied to typically focused on startup businesses. The next page, please. A touch base, I'm probably reiterating Toya's commentary on the background of what is SCORE. SCORE is a not-for-profit company and is nationwide in its entity. Okay, and in the Chicago area, it has some 50 years in being, and we presently have some 9 locations, and in total, a little over 100 volunteers. Everyone but the office staff are volunteers. And they may be in a multiplicity of venues, marketplaces, and we try to tie them into the presentation that's being made so the background is comparable if at all possible. And that relates to the third dash, which talks about mentoring. Mentoring does not charge. It's a member of SCORE who's going to work with you to evolve your plan and aid you in marketing your business. And they do so, as it indicates there, at no cost to you. It's part of what SCORE offers the world in terms of contributions to business planning. Important for you again is you moved on me just a little too quickly. I can pick up on this page 1, IA1. We're okay. this plan really relates in the mentoring says the mentor is there for you and with you as long as the two of you believe he contributes or she contributes, and then the mentor would move out of your effort. So basically, it's a free effort by someone we hope who has background in your market area of concentration and can contribute to your evolution of your business plan. We're working in something we call either a workshop or a webinar, and that's really what SCORE does on a regular basis. And you'll see some math about that in a moment. Next page, please. Okay, we're writing a business plan. Let me describe what is a business plan. It's pretty basic 101 stuff. So we summarize your business, evolve the critical documentation of the historical financial statements if you have any time in which you've been in business. If not, we're talking about projecting your financial statements as terms of the growth of your evolution in your company, and that's what we termed earlier the pro forma financial statement. Strictly futuristic, not typical of what an accountant would have done for you in the past because they focus on history. This focuses on the future. Next page, please. Okay. The bottom line of this effort that you have to postulate as you form your business plan is defining a market need that your idea, whether it be a product or service, is responding to. So that's the vision, as we call it, of the business plan. There's a need, and hopefully you're fulfilling that need with your product or your service. The characteristics of your product or service define features of it, what you view to be the advantages versus other products or services that are there in the marketplace, and what are its limitations. Often these limitations are driven by the lack of funding, and therefore they will be mitigated when you obtain the funding that I hope your plan will evolve as we complete it and present it to either banks for a loan or to third parties who will invest with you, such as a private equity group. Your organization should focus on a market segment. We once had someone who came in and had multiple market segments they're focusing on. We thought that was an overkill for what you're focused on today. Assume you've got a market segment that you've defined. The customers that are there are well defined in most market segments, and we define that as a niche. That's the market you're going to focus on. And we're going to characterize that market segment through the course of the business plan. Number one, we'll estimate its size. We'll talk about how we distribute and the pricing of your product or service. And your forecast will be a growth curve some 3 to 5 years in the future. Someone funding it or contributing to a loan want time for you to generate a business effort that could pay it back. And normally we don't expect you're able to do it in year one. So we presume this plan will go to a 3 to 5 year forecast. Page A3, please. Okay. One of the, and I have a lot of crucials, but one of the most crucial section of the plan is a discussion about the people who will compete with you. Recognize that as you enter this marketplace, whatever your product or service may be, there is going to be competition, and the competition is not going to welcome you. So you've got to make a point of defining them in as much detail as you can. And you'll see the next to last bullet there, talking about their strengths and weaknesses and their vulnerabilities to your product or service offering. Then surely, as we talk about the 3 to 5 year period, we've got to talk about your penetration of that market segment. And we'll make estimates of that based on what we conclude are relevant to other businesses that are in that market and what share they may have, and then assume you're successful in penetrating up to a point that we'll define as part of the plan. Okay? And then the pro forma profit and loss statement again relates to a futuristic forecast of the profit and loss statement. That will encumber direct costs, which are the costs of the people working for your firm, your fixed expenses, that's your overhead. And then I've stopped at profitability at cash flow, which is really pre-tax profitability. I did not feel it appropriate to go into the detail of an after-tax scenario because it's more complex, and I'd rather wait till your accountant can do that. But today, and in your plan as we evolve it, we'd suggest you stop at cash flow, which is pre-tax. And then again, we say the forecast over a 3 to 5 year period, which gives your business enough time to generate a profitability that can pay back the loan or a magnitude of return to the people who invested in the program with you. Page A4, please. Okay, in the plan's forecast, normally you've seen a hockey stick presented, and we're uncomfortable with a singular hockey stick. So we recommend that as you enter the market, you establish a modest growth curve. And then if you're getting good feedback based on your interviews, and I'll talk about that in a moment, you can put in an aggressive curve. And if your feedback's not really exciting, you put in a slow curve. So basically, in your business plan, there'll ultimately be 3 curves. Starting with the modest, which responds to what you hear, aggressive, which talks about how much they like your idea, and slow if they don't think you walk on water. Okay? And then one that's key phrase is the next bullet, and it talks about your forecast must be realistic. And that is something that is reasonably attainable in the time frame that you have. Okay? Now, the investors, they could very well be you, could be third parties that you're associated with, could be loans from a banking source, or it could be financing investment through third parties. And the third party often are private equity firms who invest in startups. The return on investment, from my experience with private equity people, they demand one in the teens, which is very aggressive. The banks merely want you to create one where you're going to pay back your loan on time. The private equity people are not looking for something as modest as that. They want an aggressive curve. And my experience with them is they look for a teen number to recognize the growth of your return on investment. The global opportunity. My firm had 8 offices around the world. It's a vital opportunity. We think it's inappropriate for this particular presentation. You must establish yourself in a market as tough as the US market. And when you're established there and are profitable, you then could look at the international marketplace. Recognize that's made up of multiplicity of companies, and each one has its own modus operandi as to how they work and what the requirements are to enter it successfully. So virtually every country you enter requires its own business plan. It's not to be included in this presentation. Merely alert you to it that over time, as you succeed in the US market, it's a place you may want to look because there are significant opportunities in the global marketplace. Page A5, please. We talked about the team. I often feel it's too early to define your team. So I'd rather you put in that section a list of resumes of the people who you want to hire, and you may not even know who they are at this point in time. So I'll have a resume of every level of the company that you can define today, but without a name associated with it, because we're presuming you haven't identified that person. If you have identified some people you want on a team, then merely list them and present their resume in this particular section. The last bullet on this page relates to something wonderful called risks. If I may, every one of us encounter risks when we go into a business, in this case, a comparatively new business. And in the case of risks, we talk about areas that we're vulnerable to. And this vulnerability, again, may be related to the fact that we haven't got our funding yet. And once we do, we can mitigate those risks. But at this point, it's not there yet. So we're going to talk about what product and service development challenges you face, what help you need in your marketing of your ideas, the competitive posturing of your marketplace. Recognize they are not going to welcome you into the market. So therefore, you've got to be prepared to take them on, and they have lots of alternatives as to what they may do. If they're financially stable, they can attack you on price below what you want. I had one experience with that where a company entered a client's marketplace, came in at below cost because their conclusion was they could drive our client out of the business place. In reality, what happened is they drove themselves into bankruptcy because our client was strong financially and did not cave in to their approach to the marketplace. So you never know what a competitor will do. They may increase their marketing staff. Depends on how they view your business entry as a competitive effort. If they believe in you and believe you're a threat, they will be more aggressive if they can afford to do it in the context of where we are. And that's how do you mitigate these risks? And that is really to look at how your competition is going to respond to you and be prepared to react to them. Because I promise you, there will be no welcome to the market party by your competition. They will do anything aggressively they can because you're about to mitigate something they've spent years trying to build, and they're not happy campers about that effort. So recognize you're going to get competition coming at you in any manner they can, and if they can afford it. And that's something you've got to be prepared to respond to. Next page, please. Okay. Maybe the most important section in a business plan. One, of course, that you write at the end and the last section you've written after you've done all the other chapters we alluded to earlier. In the old days, we used to talk about aiming for a single page. My experience in today's market is you might get away with a couple, maybe three, but not 5 or 6 or 7 in depicting your summary of your business that you're bringing into the marketplace. The reason this section is so critical is it's typically read by a senior member of the organization that's going to fund you. If they get turned on by your summary, someone else normally has the need to read the rest of it, which is the rest of your business plan. They may not stay involved in it, but they at least are turned on by the prospect you presented in your executive summary. So it's got to be written, it's got to be succinct, it's got to be one that defines your marketplace that you're going to be entering, and your competition is going to be there, and why you're going to be a success in that particular market. Next page, please. Okay, this is my motherhood page. One, your business plan's got to be positive about what you know and where you're going with it. You got to be enthusiastic about you believe you're going to make it happen. It's got to be succinct because they're limited to the number of pages you're going to get away with. And there's no magic number. As many of you often have asked me, there is a number that you write. And from my perspective, you write as many as you want to write. We can always sit down with your mentor, and your mentor can reduce those pages if they're redundant, but if not, they capture the essence of what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? And then your command and understanding of the business environment that you're planning to enter. Page 3, please. Okay, what is your business? Clear points to there, the management of your organization as you view it to be in the future, again, with the resumes of people you have not even met yet, possibly, and surely haven't hired yet. And then what facilities are you going to need to make this business work? Page 4, please. Key one, if you're in a product business entering, and that's your technology versus existing technology in the marketplace. Often what we find our clients are most concerned about not existing technology because they know it, they know of its capability, and they know what they have to do to compete. It's any new technology that may be coming into the marketplace. Often, if you do the interview program I'm going to suggest, and by the way, that encompasses maybe 50 or 60 interviews if you're doing those with customers, potential customers, and a critical part of it is your competition. So when those are being done, many of the people in the customer base have been approached by third parties with a new technology that has certain features. You want to know what those are as you interview them and have an understanding of your ability to compete effectively with these evolving technologies by third parties that you're going to face. Okay, so again, we talk about how do you tend to take advantage of your technology to enhance the business that you want to enter. The personnel plan is straightforward. Who are they? And by job description, and then order fulfillment, how will you fulfill orders? Very basic observation. Page number 5, please. Okay, starting your marketing plan. Again, from my point of view, one of the most critical sections of the presentation of your business plan because it's the way you're going to get revenue. Okay, first of all, we talked about what product and service features you have. The environmental factors is a macro situation, and that's what's the U.S. market like? Is it likely to be growing in a positive sense? Is it going to be coming down in a negative sense? It's important you can identify that, and obviously, we could hope you're entering into an environment that's a plus in terms of the macro effort in the U.S. market. The micro will relate to your target market segment or segments, but the environmental factors will cover the macro situation. And then your definition of competition and your customer base and potential customer base will tell you who these competitors are. And if they've had any experience with them to date, they'll tell you something about them because we talk about a rating of competition, a rating of your idea versus this competition. The value proposition is putting together the ingredients of the plan and talk about competing in this marketplace. And that's really the definition of the value proposition. Then how do you price your product or service? We'll talk through the alternatives. We identified 3, there may be more, but those 3 are really vital to your success, and we'll talk through that as well. How do you market product? We don't believe you're going to have enough dollars to do an advertising program. So one, we feel you'll see we have a page on that. We talk about your website, a critical ingredient of your future. And then we're talking about how you market. And one of the ways we think is very effective is having you get involved with the association that relates to your business, either your product or your service, and speak in their meetings. Talk through what you have in mind and why your product or service has benefits that can do something interesting in this marketplace. And that's what you're going to portray in your speech. Okay. Then we've got you looking at your marketing of your product, and then obviously the result is your revenue forecast. One way to determine your revenue forecast, let's look at what you deduce from talking to your customers, potential customers, and your competition as to how large are your competitors. Once you have a feel for them, you get a sense as to where you think you can be in competition with them, and we can then do a revenue forecast. And remember, I had them as modest growth, aggressive one, and slow. So you basically have 3 curves defining your revenue forecast. Page number 6, please. Okay, Starting the plan, you're looking at the marketing. What are your product and services? And what are the features and benefits of these products and services? And you're going to define these as best you can characterize it. And obviously, you're going to emphasize those where you feel are in addition to anything that the competitors have been offering this marketplace. Okay, we can talk about patents and intellectual property, but we have not found a program yet that's been presented to SCORE through our auspices or in the work I've done together with the city of Chicago, where we've got a patented product or service coming to market. So it may not be relevant, but it's something you have to recognize if it is. Page number 7, please. Okay, this we talked about earlier, the value proposition, which is defined as I'll read a succinct statement of your business that will meet your customer needs. Remember, we indicate what are the customer needs initially. That's what your product's supposed to be serving. Your service is supposed to be serving. And then how does it compete with existing products or services, or if you're able to deduce from your comments and interviews with your customers any evolving technology that's coming, the product or service description of those technologies. Okay. And the question is, how does your product or service benefit the customers you want to serve? It usually is an add-on in some way or a substitute of a feature that exists today that you're offering and is a better value than the offering that exists today. Okay, and then we've got to talk about crucial ingredient, and that's define the strengths and weaknesses of your competition. Typically, the interviews with the end users who use these competitors or have viewed them in some manner can aid you in defining your competition and also characterize the strengths and weaknesses of the competitors. Other competitors can do so as well, but their view is one of a competitor, and usually they're not fair in their observation that's competing with them. So the people who they try to sell to will be able to tell you whether their marketing program, their features, every other aspect of their product or service, how it serves their needs, and therefore is it vital and is that a strength? Or is it a weakness of the competition because it doesn't meet the needs of the marketplace as the marketplace perceives it? Page number 8, please. Okay, we're focused on a target market. Typically in these, the target market has a geographic limit to it. It's not usually all across US, but it's not a problem if it is. And it's one that you're going to concentrate your product and service offering. If it's a consumer market, which is one you and I buy from every day at the store, it typically will have demographic characteristics and psychographic, much more complex issue when it goes consumer. If it's a business product, it's really defining the industry segment and characterizing its size, its revenue, and geographically where it's going to be located. Then you've got to estimate the size of the market segment. And if I may, it relates to what you know about competition and the best estimate you can get of their size, and then how you view your penetration will be against their particular position. You may believe you can penetrate quickly, but we felt a 3 to 5 year period would give you time to establish your credibility for the product or market offering you have, and then you can penetrate in that manner and deduce what penetration level you're going to attain over the period of 3 to 5 years. Okay, again, please be prepared. Your competitor will come at you, and therefore be prepared to respond to a competitive thing. One of the things we like to do is assume we were a competitor. What would we do to compete with you? And that is something you probably have to presume is going to happen because there's no welcoming to the market presentation on their part. Page number 9, please. Okay, included in your definition of your market segment, the demographic data we referred to earlier in the consumer situation, the industry organizations, usually our trade associated organization that you might have access to, and then the market research part of it. That's the specialty of my organization that has been being some 30 some years. So basically, what you're going to be doing is talking to customers, talking to potential customers, and last but surely not least, you're going to be talking to competition. The question is, oh, and I don't want to forget the distributors. If it's a product to use distributors to get to market, that's normally a product-oriented situation. If it's a service, it's normally direct from the company to the marketplace. Okay, and as you see this situation evolve, again, you're going to get a response from your competition. Be prepared for it, presume what it could be, and then just figure out how you're going to respond to it. Because you can and can effectively once you understand what their strengths and weaknesses really are. Page number 10, please.
We have a couple of questions. Do you want me to take them, Aaron?
Yes, please.
All right, so the first one is from Karen. She says, what resources do you recommend for researching market segments?
I find that there's lots of published data on market size and market characteristics. I don't lean towards that at all. I feel the market's characteristics will come from your interviews with customers, potential customers, and ultimately with competition. Remember, the competitive reviews are last. They are only done when you have a knowledge base of the market you're trying to penetrate. And when the competitor realizes that, and you've had interviews with, let's say, 50 or 60 customers, many of whom are customers of theirs or potential customers, they will talk to you. We have rarely ever had a turn down from a competitor. First, they have to understand we're knowledgeable about their market. Two, we're prepared to tell them things about it. Often they may not even realize. And therefore, this gives you a base of entry to the competitor and therefore the response base of the competition. So again, realize potential customers come first, include distributors in that matrix, and then ultimately the final set of interviews are with your competition. Now, ideally, these are one-on-one interviews with them. Presumption is they're all in the Chicago area. That may not be true. So you may have to use the telephone. I don't think you can afford to travel to them, but if you can, that's even better. A one-on-one interview with a competitor is easily the most effective interview you can obtain. You can gain a sense of them, you can get a feel for them, you can get a perspective on their view of you and their view of the market that they're serving. So a one-on-one with them is great. Otherwise, unfortunately, the telephone, email is not a meaningful way to get information from anybody, let alone a competitor. Number 10, please.
There's still a couple of questions. So
Okay,
next
great.
one is if you do have what you feel is a unique idea or niche, is there a way to protect your idea as you kind of pass it around while getting your plans together?
My experience with that is probably not. It's tough to go with anything new, call it unique if I may, and talk to possible customers who will be buying the product or service and not tell them about it. Just as other competitors may have been talking to the same people with their ideas that they, of course, view to be unique in some manner. So you don't really have a choice. What you do have, though, is the capacity to take this idea, get response from the marketplace to whether it's additive or not to their offering in the market, and then move into your business plan and move forward with it as rapid as you can. So penetration occurs from timing It's not going to occur because they don't have the ability to respond to what you are, because you have to tell people what it's going to be, or you can't make any judgment as to whether it has value to them, and therefore you can penetrate in some manner.
And one more question. How do you find trade organizations that relate to your business?
There are associations that have their names associated with your business area, and they're published all over the marketplace, the Googles of the world to find them. It's not difficult to find industry associations that have relationships to the business area in which you're going, and it's the product or service area in which you're going to, and they are more than willing to chat with you, just as your distributors and ultimately, because you're knowledgeable, your competition. You shouldn't have difficulty getting to any of these people. The customer interviews will tell you who the competition is. The competition will tell you who some other competitors are you may not have in your list. You'll get everybody that you have to talk to through your interviews with your marketplace. Recognize they're critical to you to undertake before you go after your competition. Distributors and customers and potential customers are included in that early interview process. And as I estimated, it could be as many as 50 or 60 people. And then your competition comes last when you're knowledgeable and you can talk to them about their product or service and how vital it is or isn't to the marketplace, as your product or service will be competing with them. Number 10, please. Okay. We want to operate in an economic environment that's positive. They're not always so, and these are macro forecasts. You have nothing to do with it. You want to get this forecast from your bank. You want to get this forecast from any government data that you can identify. Okay? But it's macro market growth, the feeling of the growth of the U.S. economy, and are you entering an economy that's growing? Or you enter an economy that's not? Ultimately, that question is going to be applied to your market segment as well. But let's start with the country perspective and then go to that. The demographics are, as we talked earlier on that page, with the details that are normally required in a consumer product play. And then an interesting one I have here is government regulations. The government, as you know so well, is always getting involved in doing something to a market area that you may be contemplating entry within. Please recognize that if you're able to identify anything that they're discussing in Congress, that they've implemented in Congress, and embodied that in your plan and its impact on your entry, does their ideas that they're evolving affect your product or your service in any way? The more you can identify that, the more impressive you are in the fact you've taken a global look at your entry level posture and what's competing with you, and one may be government regulations. We talked a moment ago about technology changes. These are those that, again, are evolving from third parties who may have new technology plays just as you may have in your product offering, as opposed to your service offering I have, and therefore we must understand what they are and how you compete with them. And we'll talk about that in a moment on a chart that has comparison of all of it. And then the discussion of the final set of interviews with the competition and the strengths and weaknesses of these competitors as viewed by the customer base and maybe the competitive base that you will have interviewed. Page number 11, please.
We have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you able to convince the financial institutions if you are new in the business and have no good business credit?
From my perspective, if you approach a bank, one that you may want to work with in some way in your business, the bank normally has access to macro forecasts of the economy. And if the bank doesn't have it readily available, or if they for some reason won't share it with you, which would be surprising, it's published. in all kinds of periodicals and surely through the association that serves that particular market niche. So it's accessible to you in a macro sense. And that's what you want in what I termed here the economic forecast. It's not the detailed forecast of your market segment. It's the forecast of the macro market, which embodies the US in this case. We're not going global yet. So recognize if it's growing, that's great, like it is now. But if it's not, you got to be prepared to enter, or if you want to enter in a market, that's not a plus. But you still can enter because your entry is a small part. Your entry is a small part uh, of what impact you may have in a marketplace. So how large it is a measure, not whether it's growing or not. But a growth environment is a plus if you're entering with something new. Number 11, please. Okay, this is a discourse on competition. And as I indicated earlier, it's vital to your effort in your business plan. The more you can tell me about the competition, the better this plan is going to be. And the competition definition comes from the meeting with customers and potential customers who this competitor has tried to serve in some manner or is contemplating serving and is talked to them in some way so you can determine what they have to offer. And then they will tell you what they view to be the strengths and weaknesses of the competition as it serves as a complement to their product or service offering. Okay, so you're going to talk about product service features. You're going to talk about best you can on pricing estimate for them. You're going to talk about how you get access to the market. And again, if it's a product, you normally need distribution. If it's a service, you normally can go one-on-one with members of your staff. Management experience, vital input to the market's view of how strong their management team is. And same thing with their financial capability. How strong is that? And you might find out directly if they have any view of your competition being meaningful, they will spend money to mitigate your entry into the market. Okay, number 12, please. We believe a chart like this is interesting for you to evolve. And it really comes from all your interviews with these customers and potential customers. It is obviously the comparative strengths and weaknesses is on a rating I have of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 being the highest, obviously. It's literally you and the assumption here that there may be 5 competitors. I've listed a series of competitive features. The other possibility on that listing could be features of a product or features of a service, and there are multiple features, and you want to get a rating of those from the customers and potential customers to whom you will speak. And they'll rate it. In the case of this, let's take these specifically. The product service development of a particular competitor A, they will rate it as a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rating, and you'll continue that on all these features until you end up with a chart. And the chart has lots of 5s in it and some 4s, 3s, etc. And the chart depicts the marketplace's view of the competitive strengths and weaknesses of the people you will face as you enter the marketplace. They will also give you a similar rating of you and your product or service offering, and you'll have a line item which has 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on it as well of your product or service offering. So you now have a pictorial view of the marketplace, quantitatively viewed this way in the context of their offering to the market as perceived by the customers and potential customers they may serve. And even if you can get your competition to rate it, but they're not likely to spend much time with you on that subject, your competition. Now, again, realize on the competitive features, it doesn't have to be the subjective one I posed here. It could be the quantitative features of a product. What does it offer the marketplace? There may be 3 or 4 or 5 of those features that are key, and you want your marketplace that ultimately will be customers of this product or service offering to tell you what their rating is of what these competitors have to offer. Okay, a key chart if you can put it together, and if you can get both features and the qualitative competitive ingredients of it, and get the rating of these, you've got something to operate on. And as you present it to the people who view your business plan as an investor or as a lender, such as a bank, it's a very meaningful chart for them to talk about what you've done in rating the strengths and weaknesses of your future competition. Next page, please.
We have a question from a visual artist, actually. She says, I was taught to not look at others' work, to not look at competition. Please advise, since you've said to actually look at the competition.
Could you repeat that, please? I lost you on the way over as to what the party has wanted to know. I beg your
Right.
pardon.
As a visual artist, I was taught to not look at others' work, to not look at competition. Please advise, since you said to actually look
Okay.
at the competition.
Yeah, I can relate to that readily. Please recognize that when you're meeting with customers, most of them have been approached in some way by anyone developing new product or service offering. And they will have a view of their product or service offering versus the one you're bringing to market. You want to know their view of the comparative issue. So it's not parallel to what the gentleman who's in the art world is posing. It's something you must perceive from the discussions you're going to have with these interviews. You've got to understand how the market views your product or service vis-a-vis the competition that you're going to face in the future. And if it means you've got to modify your product or service in some way to offer benefits to the marketplace that you didn't have originally, but you will have because you believe you could do better than what's being offered, then that's there as well. So it's something you're going to learn from the interviews, and you're going to respond to either by changing your product or service or merely going with it more aggressively because you really have advantages over present offerings in the marketplace. So knowing what your competitive features are is vital. Next page, please. A wonderful page called pricing, if I may. The straightforward pricing posture that most people play with is your cost, your direct cost, your overhead cost, and then a margin that you wish to have. That's your cost plus pricing format. Another one is finding out what your customer is paying to your competition that has products that may be in the same ballpark as you're offering. And often the customer will hesitate telling you because if they're overpricing it based on the pricing you want to offer, they um, uh, they're sometimes hesitating if they paid more than they should pay. But you got to try it and see if they will tell you what pricing they faced with the marketplace, what pricing they've heard is being offered, and therefore how it compares to the pricing you want to offer into the marketplace for the service or product offering you're conceiving. Competitive-based pricing has much the same scenario. It's whatever the marketplace has encountered with competition. You're talking to the people who are paying for it because they're buying product or service from people who are today or will be your competition, and therefore you want to know what that posture is. So the more you can gain from your interviews on what the customers are paying, and what the competitors view is relevant pricing if they'll verbalize it with you or at least talk about it. Well, one of the things we like to do is once we get into the market and have some knowledge of the interview process, we might tell a competitor or even a customer that the price is $1 to $1.50 a unit. Frankly, we may not have any idea if it is, but that pricing format presented to them will motivate them to respond. They'll either tell you you're way off or that's in the ballpark. And if you're in that and you have a range offering that it's $1 to $1.50, You got a $0.50 play in the range, and they may find that to be a reasonable perspective. You may not get a precise number, and I'd be surprised if you do. But if you did, that's great. But if not, you're going to get a range of pricing. You can create one, as you're going to do on market size and market growth, and you're going to gain a response from the marketplace to that pricing format. Number 13, please.
We have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in urban agriculture, a lost skill set. I have an issue when doing market interviews on people's understanding of the market. How can I write a solution into the business plan?
Not sure I fully capture the observation. You're going to have difficulty talking to these people who will be customers ultimately in the marketplace? Is that the comment that's been made? Will you help me with it in terms of the whether that's the,
From my understanding, it seems like the market does not understand. The people she's talking to do not understand. One second. I think she has replied. Okay, so she says difficulty in people understanding the need for local produce versus grocery stores.
I missed that. Local what? Local what?
Local produce. Like local
I
fresh
guess I really haven't captured the question aptly yet, but
Let me try
the
rephrasing.
marketplace can't be competitive if they don't understand what's being offered to them. So I assume at some point these customers and potential customers will understand what they've been asked to buy. And if it does in any way complement their product or service offering, or if they're into a, as you said, a supermarket, there are multiple competitors there, and what are these competitors offering in regard to what you are contemplating offering as well? I'm not sure I captured the question well, but if you want to ask it again and reposition it, please do so at any point in the presentation today. But I apologize. I don't think I've done well with the question. I'm not sure what you were seeking and an answer.
If she
Okay,
writes back, I will definitely let you know.
thank you. In the pricing, I talk about multiple layers because how often you have distributors when you're playing with a product. And the distributors have a margin that they need to live in the market. And then ultimately they have a price that's going to go to market that they're going to try to sell to your customer or potential customers as well. So you've got to understand your margin to them and their margin to the marketplace as you posture your pricing. Okay. Often we talk about price sensitivity. That is, if someone offers a significant purchase to you, are you prepared to reduce your price accordingly? The answer may be no. The answer may be yes, and you got to be prepared to answer it depending upon how significant that purchase may be by the customer base there. Okay. And then one that we always like is the razor and razor blade product, because they sell a base product that has to have razor blades follow on, and therefore they have a continuum of sales of razor blades. If your product resembles anything like that, it's an ideal situation to be in, as long as you can sell the razor equivalent to your product. So that's key, but the use of support products such as razor blade is vital in this case and may be vital in yours, but we'll have to determine what you have. Okay. A discount structure again depends on the volume purchases they're contemplating. You may have one, you may decide not to have one at all, and the price is the price regardless of how much they buy. That's your call. And then how will competitors react to your pricing once you posture it, because you're going to posture it to the customer base that you're in? I promise you, the competitors will find out about you and find out about everything you've discussed with a potential customer or an existing customer, because they serve them as well and they can get input from them. Okay. And then basically, how will you respond to changes in your competitor's strategy and their pricing, both in a marketing sense in their strategy and in their pricing, because they could lower their product because financially they have the capacity to do that. And that's a tough competition if they lower it too aggressively. I told you the story earlier of one who did it too aggressively and they lost their position in the market. But it may happen if that's one of their approaches to compete with you. They're apt to do anything they can to mitigate your entry into the marketplace. Page 14, please. Promotion. I'm presuming most of you are in a startup mode. And if so, I don't feel advertising is something you could readily afford. Couponing, pretty straightforward. A website, a must. And I taught at the IIT Research Institute, and they had a professor who focused on websites. And she was quite adept at talking about the strengths and weaknesses of websites. So approaching that person, if she's still there or others are like her are offering it, it's vital. But website, including in your plan, is a must. And then personal selling, that's true typically when you're selling into a service or you're taking your product to distributors. And then one I find to be is valuable, and the one I have in bold is public relations and network. You can create articles about the technology or product area you're serving and why you have something that's beneficial. You could talk about the growth of the market because now you're pretty well positioned to discuss it because you've interviewed a lot of people and you know what you want to know from them. And then you've got the ability to basically speak at these associations as well. And again, to the young lady who asked, how do you know who they are? Every industry segment typically has an association serving it, and they're well defined. Readily accessible to finding who they are, and just look them up in something as simple as Google, and you'll be able to identify the associations that serve your particular marketplace. Okay. Email or direct mail, I'm not big for that in terms of selling. And frequent buyer programs, that's meaningful to some. But if it's there, take advantage of it. If not, offer it, but that's your call as to whether that's a marketing play for you. Okay. And then budgeting of the marketing and sales campaign. Historically, I've found if someone has missed the boat, they've underestimated the magnitude of that investment. They've rarely ever overestimated it, but underestimating the dollars they're applying to penetration of the market has happened often, too often from my point of view. So recognize you've got to be budgeting adequately to make sure you can cover the market and cover it well. Again, I don't believe advertising is key to your play, but the opportunity of public relations and networking where your writing or speaking is a vehicle for extensive marketing recognition of the concept or technology that you want to bring to market. Next page, please. Your sales forecast. As I suggested earlier, I like seeing three curves on the chart. Starting with the modest entry, talking about aggressive if you're really getting a favorable reaction from your interviews, or slow if you're not getting the most favorable reaction in your interviews. And you can have all three curves. Ultimately, you're going to select one of the three, but at least you're presenting one that has an upper end, which is your aggressive curve, and a lower end, which is your slow curve. And your medium one is really that just depicts what you've probably used to enter the marketplace with. And that's the posture in the sales forecasting. Okay. Now, the question is, how rapid of a growth curve can you have? It depends on what you feel will be the magnitude of the modest sales forecast, aggressive sales forecast, and slow sales growth. And basically, that'll come from what positioning you've found in the marketplace by the competition. How significant are they? What are you learning in terms of their growth? And how can you believe you can compete with them based on your judgment and the marketplace's judgment from that chart, how you compare to their features and the strengths and weaknesses of their product or their service. And that'll aid you in penetration. But recognize, we picked a 3 to 5 year period for your curve because you're not going to make it all happen in year one. It's going to take a while to have you get recognition and acceptance. So your curve should be reasonable in that context. Okay. The private equity firms who fund and also invest in businesses such as yours often ask for monthlies for 18 to 24 months, and then over a 3 to 5 year penetration scenario. So that may very well be the case depending on who your financial source is. And you've got to be very specific if you're into a monthly forecast, which is an ultimate challenge, if I may. And the last dash on the page talks about if you don't come up with a positive cash flow in the work you're doing, don't bring product to market. You better posture it so you do and believe you can attain it, or you are spending a lot of time in someone's dollars as well as your own to attain penetration. Page number 16, please.
We do have a couple of more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what methods are effective to determine what customers are willing to pay? Example, surveys, focus groups, interviews, or should we just rely on competitor research?
No, I have used the customers who ultimately are the ones who are going to buy it. The competitors aren't going to buy it, the customer is. And I lay a price in front of them, whether I think that's the price I'm going to end up with or not, but hopefully it's close to mine, and get their reaction to it. They're going to tell you that makes sense. They think that's in the ballpark. They're going to tell you you're out of your mind, you're way out of base, or maybe they'd even allude to the fact you're underpriced. That's unlikely. So they're probably going to give you one that makes sense, or basically you're overpriced. And you got to get a reaction from them. So you get the marketplace to tell you what they think of the pricing scenario you've offered. Hopefully it has something to do where you expect to be, and go forward from there. The market's going to tell you whether you can penetrate based on your pricing scenario. We're not talking about the quality of your product or the features that it offers now. We're talking merely the pricing you had. If you're not sure from anything you've heard so far, put a price out in the market, just like you're going to put a revenue stream in the marketplace and size the market. Do the same, just lay it on them and let them respond to it. The ones who are most knowledgeable on that. Pricing is customer based, volume, size of market, etc., is competitor based.
And the next question is, how long should the business plan, as in how many pages should a business plan be regarding a new product or invention when approaching new lenders or interested investors?
That's a viable question, if I may. Let me respond to it from my perspective. I don't believe you want to count pages when you're writing. If you have something to offer the business plan that's productive and contributory to what you're trying to accomplish, add it to the business plan. The person who should be able to help you if you've overkilled the writing is your mentor. Remember, the mentors are available through SCORE. They're no cost, and they're people normally who have background in the business area in which you're going to focus. So it's worth talking to them, telling them what you have in mind, having them read your plan. And if you have anybody else that you respect, have them read your plan, and they'll respond to you if they think it's an overkill in terms of the number of pages. But I don't think you should be counting pages when you're writing it. I believe you should really write as you have something to offer from your perspective, and then whatever the number of pages are, they are. And that's what you're going to present to the people who are aiding you in focusing this marketing plan. And they'll tell you if you've overkilled the subject, if you've been redundant, and people often are on a particular subject in the marketplace. So please Write to what you believe you have as a knowledge and let the market tell you who are part of you, meaning they're people you work with, people you trust, people you respect, will tell you if they think it's too much of an overkill. And therefore the size will be measured accordingly. So we have no magic number for size of a business plan. Number 16, please. Okay, we talked about the curves. You're going to have a modest curve to enter. You're going to talk about an aggressive curve if, in fact, the marketplace gives you reason to feel you're aggressive, or a slow curve if it doesn't. And the slow curve has to come up with a positive cash flow, or it shouldn't be on the chart at all. Okay, so you may have three, and then you're going to pick one. But remember, you've got to view where you are on your forecast. May be either right on modest or right on aggressive, or somewhere between modest and aggressive. Same thing between slow and modest. It may be on either of those two curves, or it could be somewhere in between the two. You just pick a growth curve ultimately that you believe is attainable. And it is wherever it is on this chart of aggressive, modest, and slow, and that's what you're going to support as the basis of the growth you expect to undertake and accomplish in your entry in the marketplace. Then, go ahead, thank you. And how much money do you need? That's key to what you're asking initially. Where is it going to come from? Typically yourself, your family, or the people we've talked about, a loan from the bank. And remember, you've got to collateralize that with everything in the world that you may have. Or if you're into a private equity entity who wants the share of your business because they believe in you and believe in what you brought to market, and that's where they want to be, and they're going to finance it accordingly. Typically, they turn the money they put into your market as a loan. It's not, doesn't rate to the magnitude of it, it's just the form of it. And it's a loan because they have an easy way to get that money out of your business when you succeed. If it's an investment that's not that, they've got a more difficult time getting it out. So it may be turned into a loan, but its magnitude is the same as if it wasn't a loan. So again, where do you spend the money? If it's a startup, you're in a capital investment mode. Working capital should obviously be included. If you have an R&D base in your business, you need a capacity of serving an R&D ingredient of the thing. And always put some money in there for the wonderful world of contingencies, because you may not recognize all the factors that could affect your growth in the market initially, and you may need dollars for it. So you put a kicker in there, maybe it's 10%, 15%, some relative number that's not overwhelming, but enough to cover what you feel could be the unknowns that you're going to face in the future. Number 18, please. This is for existing businesses. If there are things that they're operating with that could be done differently and generate capital, I'd like to pass on this now, and page 19 would help, please. Okay, the question is, again, it's an existing business. We're talking about increased penetration, etc. I want to pass on that one as well. Next page, please. Okay, we talk about the historical Romney. The pro forma section of a business plan relates to the future. If you've had history, obviously that's presented, but beyond that, we're talking about 3 to 5 year presentation of what we termed a pro forma that depicts the futuristic profit and loss statement. In the profit and loss statement, I suggest you stop at cash flow, which is earnings before taxes. Don't bother with after-tax earnings. Let the accountant do that when you're down to some details of what your profit will actually be. But stop at cash flow, which is pre-tax, and that's more than adequate to describe your effectiveness in attaining what you're trying to postulate in the aggressive, modest, or low growth scenarios you're playing. Okay? And Obviously, we talked again about risks. You're going to have them. They're going to be expensive sometimes to mitigate, but you've got to recognize them, and how you're going to mitigate them is key ingredient of what you're doing, and they may cost dollars to mitigate any of these risks. Number 21, please. Okay. A key page, and I put it in bold for this statement at the beginning. Um, some people doing a new business say that they will be paid when the company profit evolves. And I suggest to you that's unacceptable. You have to be constipated, sorry. You have to be compensated from day one. And that's as a normal company would have their senior person, and I assume that's going to be you, operating the business. So you get a compensation level from what you hear in the marketplace is what a CEO is paid, and that must be included in your pro forma P&L statement. Recognize the investor is vulnerable to you. And if something happened to you and that compensation wasn't embodied in your P&L statement, they've got to find someone who will take your role, and your compensation isn't in the profit and loss statement. So whatever you presented as a bottom line, it doesn't exist. It's going to be obviated by entering your compensation. So please, at the very beginning of your work, in the pro forma you're postulating, include compensation for the CEO, who I assume will be you. Okay, we're talking about a time frame of 3 to 5 years, and you've got to do it annually at least, and not maybe monthly as that private equity people like to see. Okay, and then I talk about doing a modest revenue growth scenario, and then trying, if you're getting good feedback, an aggressive one, and if you're not getting great feedback, do slow. All three must produce a profit ingredient on your cash flow basis. If it doesn't in your cash flow, it's going to do it in your bottom line, because after that's taxes, and that should not mitigate all your profitability. Okay. Um, then we want to talk about your ability to add marketing, the sales staff, advertising budget, and anything else that was required in your business. And we're going to do so in all three of these ingredients. Okay. Worry about the upside and downside of your forecast in terms of whether or not you can attain it and what profitability it's going to portray. Number 22, please. Once you've had the three curves, and obviously the numbers relating to that, you're ready to go look at the completion of your business plan. And as I say, let me read the second bullet. Consider each of these, there are three of them, aggressive, modest, and slow, as if you were an investor, and select one as the most likely growth scenario that you can attain. With the resultant cash flow from that scenario, recognizing those downside risks that we talked about, and what it's going to cost you to mitigate any risk that you're going to face that's not captured in all of the work that you've done in terms of the product and service offering of your firm. My experience is when an investor reads a business plan, they relate to your growth curve, and that's positive, of course, but they dominate their reading on your risks. And are you overkilling the profitability? Because if you are, they're going to lose their investment, and they're not happy campers about that. So recognize the focus of the reader and the investor is typically going to be the downside of your pro forma P&L statement, not necessarily on the upside. They want to recognize that, obviously, based on your experience with your interviews with the customer base and to what extent you get input from the competition. But they're going to be most concerned about you being wrong on the downside, and therefore you become a risk. Okay, they can't handle that because they're going to lose their investment. Okay, then with the growth expectations in place and the risks recognized, conclude with the rationale for the selection of what growth scenario you're going to choose. The aggressive one, the modest one, or the slow one, or any one in between those. Those are not magic curves. Anywhere else you want to place it is fine. And then you got to be specific at the time of the expected cash flow, because again, I don't think it happens in day one. What loans you require and the payback of the loans, remember, is from the bank's point of view, it's paying off the loan. From the private equity people, is reaching the scenario that gives them the return on the investment that they expected when they invested with you. Page number 23, please. Okay, the action plan. It ultimately concludes to have you do it. Don't contemplate any more time on the business plan. If you follow this, my scenario, or multiple other scenarios you can find online in Google and lots of other places for scenarios of business plans, write it. And that's what our next page will show on page number 24. Yes, ultimately, the plan is a tool to build your business and is not a business plan to sell your business or is to sell the ingredient of your business, but you got to write it. And therefore, again, please don't count pages. Write what you have to offer in any section that you have. I gave you some sections that might be relevant. There are a multiplicity of other business plan recommendations available to you online. Google has a multiple numbers. You find one in any other posture you have. SCORE has a series at the end of the SCORE business plan in their website that'll give you alternative business plan formats as well. So you'll get multiple offerings to tell you what it should look like. Just write it or have someone work with you to write it, and it's important. So why do we have a business plan? It's a tool to really do things. It's to put your business in order, and ultimately, typically for startups, it's to get financing. Please, bullet number 3. The business plan is not your business. Don't make it a long project. You've got lots of tools available to use. Mine here, the one I've tried to present to you today, and others that you can get online. Just write it and let someone like a mentor from SCORE, remember, available to you by requesting it at no cost, okay, or available in any other party who can help you to give you some input on the effectiveness of the plan you've written. The templates we're talking about, again, there are a multiplicity of templates available. I've offered one today. There are others that you may choose because you have reason to prefer them. Go for it. Just do it. And avoiding redundancy as best you can as you write it. That's great. I promise you, if any third party reads it, they're going to identify redundancies and ask you to mitigate those as well. And then the last bullet is share and solicit feedback from anybody you can who you respect and as a basis of understanding business planning. Page number 25, please. Okay, mistakes. We all make mistakes in doing a plan or any other chore. So let me suggest some that we've seen often, okay? The individual writing a plan is not focused on the business segment that happens to be their need to penetrate, okay? So you've got to be focusing on a specific business segment and how you're going to approach that business segment. And then vital to me, because that's my consulting life, you didn't research the market. And I suggest to you, the research occurs when you go out to talk to customers and potential customers, and then ultimately finish up after you're very knowledgeable about that market segment with the competitors. And they will talk to you because you have something to offer to them. When you talk to them about these characteristics, again, be honest about some, and if you wish to conceptualize others that are your creations, create them. But share these with the competition and let them react to it, because they will react to, because if you've established your credibility and if you've met with them at the end of your interview process and you've told them you've interviewed 50 or 60 of their customers and potential customers and their competitors, then you've got something to offer them and they'll listen. Okay? Be prepared for technological threats that are entering the market, that are changing the character of the market today. They have come to your customer base and they've offered these to them, and your customer base will be more than willing to tell you there's someone else who's developed something that's even better than what you're offering or is in the same market as yours. Look for that commentary from the customers and potential customers. Okay. And then what are their needs? Your concept must serve a need of a customer base who will be the people paying you for it eventually. Okay. And then if you don't fully understand your competition, I tried to allude how you get there, and the people who will help you with it are your customers and potential customers and other competitors who will tell you about their competition. You just voice that to them, what you found, and don't hesitate creating some answers. If you don't have an answer to some questions, create an answer, offer it to them, and tell them that's what you found in the marketplace. And let them react to it and tell you whether that's reasonable or not reasonable where you go. Okay? Then, underestimating operating costs, that's often the case. Overestimating revenues and underestimating costs is typical, the problem we have. Be very conscious of that situation. Don't make profit happen because you've lowered your costs and aren't attainable. Next page, please. Okay, what you have is one that I talked about earlier, is that the faith in the success of your business. So often people enter a marketplace because they believe in it and their friends and relatives believe in it, but they haven't asked the marketplace if they believe in it. And the essence of my world for a long time in the business area of marketing assessment, marketing consulting, was what does the marketplace have to say about our client's idea? So that's key to you, more than what your friends and relatives think about it. Please relate to that. Okay, poor planning as a failure has happened to many, and that ties into whether or not they've gotten enough interviews. When we stop interviewing is when we start getting repetitive reaction from these interviewees. If they're not repetitive, then we got to keep interviewing because we gain insight from everyone. But if they start sounding the same, then we probably had enough interviews on that particular subject. Okay? And then not listening to what the marketplace people, the people you talk to, who you trust, who can offer you some guidance and the effectiveness of the business plan you've just written. And then you know, or should know, that you're going to have a legal issue as you form a company if you don't have it in place yet. And as I say in the last phrase, lots of paperwork will involve as well as cost. And that will relate to the financing that you're going to get. Who knows that ingredient, and they will help you with that aspect as well, financially as well as in content. Page number 27, please. I think we're at the end. Does anybody have any questions in regard to any aspect of the presentation? Thank you for your time, your effort. I wish you well with your concept. Please take your time making it happen, and you'll succeed if you understand your marketplace and what you're offering to your marketplace.
Everyone just saying thank you. Lots of thank yous coming through. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed that presentation, and thank you all for asking all those questions. I actually found it really interesting. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Toya. and we'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Got it. Take
Thank you,
care. Good luck,
everyone.
everybody.
All right, bye.